There was a Catholic couple in Chicago made plans to visit Florida in order to thaw out during a particularly cold winter in the windy city. They planned to stay at the same hotel where they had honeymooned two decades before. Their busy schedules, however, made it impossible for the couple to travel together. So the husband flew to Florida on Thursday, and his wife planned to arrive the following day. The husband checked into the hotel and decided to email his wife from the hotel's business center. However, he mistyped her email address. Meanwhile, in Dallas, a widow who had just returned home from her husband's funeral checked her email, expecting messages of condolence from relatives and friends. She read the first message, screamed, and fainted. The widow's son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw this on the computer screen. To my loving wife, from your departed husband. Subject, I have arrived. I know you are surprised to hear from me so soon, but they have computers here now, and I thought I'll let you know I am already here and I have been checked in. Everything is ready for your arrival tomorrow. P.S. Sure is hot down here. It's a long joke. Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today, the last Sunday of Advent, the focus is on Mary, the mother of Jesus. In today's gospel, she is presented as saying yes to a call from God, the call to be the mother of God's Son. She stands in a long time of biblical women who faithfully served the purpose of God. Her readiness to serve God's purposes had enormous implication for us all. Because of her generous response to God's call, God's Son became flesh like us in all things, but sin, and we were given the opportunity to become his followers, to take him as our way, our truth, and the life. This young woman from the insignificant village of Nazareth had enormous influence for good on all our lives because of her generous response to God's presence. In many respects, her influence for good was unique among all women and men. Yet, we can often underestimate the extent of our own influence for good. We too, like Mary, make ourselves available to serve God's purposes. Our own yes to what God may be asking of us all will always benefit others. God worked powerfully through Mary's responsiveness to the call she received. God can work powerfully through our own efforts to do whatever God may be asking of us. If I am living in a way that corresponds to God's desire for my life, those with whom I am in contact will be built up by my presence, and they will be supported in their own efforts to live as God is calling them to live. The opposite is also true. Our own failure to respond to the Lord's promptings in our lives undermines others and make their efforts to do God's will all the more difficult. We are all interconnected. We live very interdependent on others, whether we are aware of it or not. That is especially true when it comes our relationship with God. Putting it simply, our living well somehow enable others to live very well. Responding to God's call, serving God's purposes, living God is asking us to live does not always come easy to us. There will be often an element of struggle involved. We often have to struggle to discover what God may be asking of us, and then we may find ourselves struggling further to do what God appears to be asking of us. In our first reading, we find David engaged in a struggle. It took David some time to discover what God was asking of him. Initially, he had his own ideas as to what God would have wanted. David has decided that he was going to build a magnificent house for God to dwell in, a temple. It seems like a good idea, and the prophet Nathan supported God's plan. Nathan told him to do all that was on his mind. However, it became clear that what was in David's mind was not what was in God's mind. God did not want David to build a temple. Through the prophet Nathan, the Lord said to David, "The Lord will make you a house." David learned that what he wanted was not what God wanted. We are all prone to making the same mistake like David made. We can confuse our plans and purposes with God's plans and purposes. We can confuse what we want with what the Lord wants from us. As believers, we already have to be asking ourselves, is this really what God is asking of us? In the run up to Christmas, we might ask the Lord to help us to discern what He may be asking us over the Christmas period, and to give us strength to do what He may be asking of us. If our living of Christmas corresponds to God's purpose for our lives, it will be easier and happier and a more blessed Christmas for those whose lives we influence.